Connecting to cloud.
This meeting is being recorded.
Great. Thanks a lot, Tony. So welcome everybody to the JupyterLab weekly meeting. And I think first we have an introduction.
Yeah. As some of you may know, we have a Jupyter Community Building Committee that was formed at the end of last year to take over or to formalize the organization of the Jupyter Community Workshops and JupyterCon, et cetera, and look at community events in general. And one of our first tasks, so this committee is Sylvain Corlet, Anna Ruvalcaba, and myself for now. And one of our first tasks was to find a person that could help manage events and create events and help the community event process. And we were lucky to find Gail Allington, who's here on our call. She just joined NumFocus to work on Jupyter community events just, I think, a week or two ago. And so with that, I'll let Gail introduce herself.
Yes, thank you, Jason. Yes, I think today is day 11 for me. So my name is Gail Allington, and as Jason just mentioned, I am the new community events manager. So I have about a little over 16 years of experience, corporate, freelance, entertainment, and nonprofit, but I really love, I'm fueled by bringing passionate communities together and having a shared experience. And so I'm really, really looking forward to getting to know the Jupyter community. And I'm going to be working on the JupyterCon. So I'm going to have a blog post that's going to be coming out hopefully next week is what I'm hoping. And in that is going to be a poll. And so I'm polling the community about JupyterCon just to see where everyone's comfort level and interest is. So keep a lookout for that. And just a little background, I used to walk people through, used to run kind of the A to Z of curriculum events. That was my last job at the University of Texas. So I used to help people, do the Zoom, how to record and how to do transcripts. And so I was holding myself back from like giving you the lightning talk on it, but I really am thankful for allowing me to take a few seconds to introduce myself and thank you again. So I'm excited to be here.
Welcome, Gail. Welcome. And thank you. Looking forward to see things around the community then.
Nice glasses.
So the next point, I just want to bring a short update on Jupyter 3.3. Unfortunately, I see that Mike is not there, but Mike has opened an issue that I linked about mainly the keyboard shortcut being destroyed, in the sense that when you are opening the settings editor, automatically saving them. So that means dumping all the list as the user settings. Mike is considering that's a blocking issue for 3.3. I looked at it. The main trouble is this is one of those settings that get a transformation. So that means the user settings are merged with the default one. And that's not the classical behavior, let's say, of a settings in JupyterLab. So I was looking at it to figure out what's the best way to fix it. And I see two paths. Either it's to allow another transformation in the settings plugin itself prior to saving, or the other way would be to say when you are registering a specific setting editor for plugin, you can also define a transformer to be applied to the data before saving them. And I don't know which approach would be the best. One thing that's buffer me a bit with adding the transformer inside the settings plugin directly is that those transformers, their signature for now is I receive a plugin and I give back another the same plugin but transform, and maybe it's not such a great API for just saying, okay, I want to transform the data that I want to save. So Yannick, there are lists, so that makes it messy when trying to figure out if they are equal to the default or not. Yeah. There are lists in a subkey. So if people want to comment on the issue, maybe it's easier to look at there, and I'm happy to set up a PR for it. Just like if people can comment what they think it's the best path for that, I would be glad. And the other thing, I tried to start a short document to highlight some key features of 3.3 to be published when we do the release. There's the link there. I hope that everybody will get the editable link. Normally, the last one is the good one. The question was more like, is Discourse the best place, or should we publish it also like on Medium, as it's a minor release? I think I will go for Discourse as is a minor.
Yeah, for 3.3, it seems like Discourse is probably the place for it. I took a second to answer because I wasn't sure whether we were talking about a pre-release. Yeah, I don't know. Does anyone disagree with that? I think Discourse sounds right.
Okay,
I think 3.2 was also announced on Discourse, so we could do the same.
Okay, then that should be the plan. So the target is still to try to get the final by Monday, but it will depend if we can resolve the issue or not, mainly. I don't know if anybody has last minute points or issue that they want to bring about the 3.3.
No, that sounds great.
Then I think we can move to Alex.
Yep, just a quick update for me as a follow-up to, I can't remember if it was last week or 2 weeks ago, where Martha, Jason, and I volunteered to submit a talk for what's new in JupyterLab to Sci-Fi. We submitted that, so we'll hopefully hear back from them soon. Martha is also looking into doing a tutorial. So she and I are collabing on that, and Jason may or may not also pitch in. Yeah, if people are interested in that, should they reach out to you, Martha, if we want more people helping with the tutorial?
Sure, yeah. And I don't know if you said what the tutorial would be on. It was like developing extensions for JupyterLab, which I did a tutorial, I think in 2020 at JupyterCon, that was on that. So I'm planning on repurposing a lot of that. But yeah, if anyone wants to be involved, feel free to reach out to me on Gitter.
I think timing wise, the last time we did the tutorial, it was prior to pre-built extensions. So a lot of our prior recordings aren't exactly applicable anymore.
I think it would be great also if we could even show how to make an extension for Notebook V7 in that case, because that would just be the same process.
Yeah,
Good
sure.
opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah, if all of that's released and ready on time, like it, cross our fingers, should be, that should be pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for doing that. That's great advertisement for us. And so I think we can move to Jason.
Okay. Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. So I have a couple topics I wanted to discuss. One is a pull request that I've had open for a little while that has some work in progress changes for a cell toolbar. And let me see if I can share my screen really quick to do a small demo. So this is a binder. The link is in the HackMD in case anyone wants to mess with it live. while we're watching. So the idea is that we've got this small toolbar adapted from Frederick's work on the enhanced cell toolbar that's on every cell. So you can move things down or up, add a new cell above or below, delete a cell, or copy it to the clipboard. In response to some of the early testing, the toolbar does not appear if there's any overlap. However, this is only detected once when you initially focus the cell. So if I type a new cell and I add something like this, so the toolbar is not monitored live, but when I refocus this, it doesn't appear. So I spent some time yesterday kind of working on some concepts to monitor in real time, which either didn't work or had a major negative effect on performance. So if folks have any ideas about how to listen for events, I think I also opened a discourse thread about this as well, which I can link from the page. And then also I noticed there's an interesting quirk in that all rendered markdown, well, actually, no, not all rendered. Well, no, I think all rendered markdown will be rendered with the full width. And so I've just suppressed the overlap detection for now for rendered markdown, but clearly we want to work on that as well. So I might have to make some modifications to the way we render markdown. I will reach out to try to minimize effects on folks that way. Oh, someone found my discourse thread. Thank you. So yeah, please feel free to play around with this, seeking feedback. We discussed it with some other folks last week. Still a work in progress. I'd call it alpha right now. But if you find any weird bugs that I haven't, please let me know. One other aspect I wanted to discuss with the group is we moved the triage meeting from 9 a.m. Pacific to 10 a.m. Pacific on Thursdays last week, so that the server meeting could include a collaborative hour at 9 a.m. As a result of that, the triage meeting participation went down a lot because our friends in Europe, that's even later. And for folks on the West Coast, that's getting into Scrum hour. So I'm wondering if we should continue to have the triage meeting, because I felt like last Wednesday, we did a bunch of triaging towards the end of this meeting and we had much better participation.
UX wise, I mean, it's kind of anti-feature, right? Because like when there's content in the cell and you want to like copy that, I mean, could you change it to be not inside the cell, but outside the cell, kind of like a toolbar that hovered? So if you like hover over the cell, it would appear.
We have done that in the past. I'm not sure, is Brian on the call?
Yeah, hi everyone.
Go ahead. Yeah, Brian and I were kind of going back and forth about some concepts here.
Yeah, the biggest, so there's a couple different factors that we were looking at. One is over a very long period of time, the last decade, users have communicated very strongly that they don't want more space between the cells in a notebook, that it's critical for them to see as much code as possible. And so one of the design constraints that Jason had for this was no additional new space and new cells. He did have an initial version that put the cell toolbar overlapping with the top border. The challenge is that the cells are close enough, it gets really hard to tell which cell that toolbar is attached to. And the further up you move it, the less clear it gets. The further down you move it, it still overlaps with the content in the cell. So it felt like an unwinnable trade-off. You know, we can show the mock-ups, et cetera, but those were the two trade-offs that we had. And at the end of the day, the other dimension was visual complexity. When you do that, toolbar above, yeah, you basically have to add borders, drop shadows to make it distinguishable. And we felt like that also added visual clutter. So those were the factors. We can certainly show, if Jason can post mock-ups that we did for the other scenarios. We may want to make this configurable though. There may be enough. Yeah, that may be a factor. The other factor is that there are other extensions that put content in the cell header, like a tag UI, and this approach avoids just sort of conflicting overlaps with other extensions that may be using the same area.
Nick's point is interesting. Did you, in the design process, consider using the prompt area?
Yeah, our plan, and I think it's a separate question, is to put some sort of control there that allows a user to run the cell.
Yep.
Pretty common in a number of other notebook implementations, but we just haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah, and in fact, already implemented by Frederick's enhanced cell toolbar. Frederick called it helper buttons. And I kept that code in there so that we can add that in later. We also talked about adding a plus button for a new cell near that area, but that's been removed for the time being.
The other factor that we used here is this comes from the work that Adam Rule and others have done in analyzing notebooks, is that if you look across all public notebooks on GitHub, most cells are code cells. I forget the exact percentage. And so we felt like it was more important to put new cell interactions that were focused on code and trying to do markdown and code. And you end up with a lot of visual clutter when you try to put too much. And so we're trying to walk that balance, but we realize different users may have different preferences on that.
Yeah, thanks everyone for adding your feedback in the HackMD notes.
One, not trying to bike shed, but just one idea that we had thrown around in CoLab that may be relevant here. You know, it seems like the current placement is good. The only issue is that if you were going to have text over there where the toolbar is, you know, obviously the two obscure one another. Did you ponder something we talked about and didn't do was making it so that it was usually transparent, but when you got close, it became more opaque, so that by default you could still see through it? And, you know, I mean, it's not perfect, but like you can basically see what's going on over there. You know, all of these, as you say, are trade-offs, but like that was one that we did not explore, but like at least tossed around. So, you know.
Yeah.
You know,
the MVP, Craig, is that we're just going to hide it completely because the cell toolbar is not strictly necessary. This is like, and I say this without disrespect, this is the V2 concept, is to have some way of like making it duck out of the way. We want to make sure it's discoverable, accessible, visible, all the other good things, while also not being obtrusive, which, as anyone who's worked in front-end development knows, is practically Turing award winning to get totally right. So we're going to continue to iterate on this. The first concept, though, is to just get it out of the way if there's any conflict with the contents of the cell.
Maybe a shortcut in command mode that toggles it on and off so that you could trivially bring it back explicitly, even if it's turned itself off. But I'm not sure, like, you know, some idea that somebody spitballs in the middle of a call is probably going to be less meritorious than something you've spent time truly thinking through.
No, we've had some really good discussions with this group, with our UX designer, Luna, who is Wanyue Wang on the GitHub thread. Yeah, one question is like, if we collapse it, should we have some sort of affordance to make it appear either with a keyboard shortcut or with a button or something else to make it appear again? So yeah, these are all really good bits of feedback. I thank you all for adding them into the notes here. I'll copy them out once we're done with this discussion. Any opinions? I don't want to hog too much of the time here. Any opinions about continuing to have the triage meeting at 10 o'clock Pacific on Thursdays, or doing it as part of this meeting?
My plan is to continue it when we have time at the end of the meeting. So that will depend by time to time. So for now, people are doing great job. So we were only 6 open, so that's great. And maybe
Okay.
we can keep. I don't know about the triage meeting. I don't have much time to participate, unfortunately, personally. But
Yeah, it's not great for anyone, unfortunately. 10 a.m. is a little bit too late for our friends in Europe and a little bit too late for our friends on the west coast of the US. So there's only so many hours that work for everyone. Let's try to have one this week, and then if we continue to have low participation, I might just remove from the calendar effective next week. How about that?
Is there any?
No, I'm not doing 6 a.m.
Is there anything stopping us from making it optional? So weeks where we don't get to triage during this meeting, we can run the meeting, and weeks where we do get to triage, we can cancel it because we don't need it. Because we don't always have time to triage at the end of this meeting, but when we do, I'm assuming we don't need that meeting very much.
Yeah, I hear you. I will think about that. Let's plan on having it this week because it's looking kind of like we may not get to triage stuff today. We have a fairly time-intensive agenda today. Yeah, let's keep an eye on that and encourage folks to participate. But I agree, we may not need it every week.
Tony, you get your hand raised.
Yeah, I mean, the original motivation for the triage meeting was actually geared towards the Notebook V7 release, so we could go through that backlog. It seems like if y'all are keeping up to pace, then maybe it's a good. I did it as a community thing. If it's a burden, it shouldn't be. But I think we're still going to have to find a way to organize and rally people around notebook triaging as we, cross that hurdle. So maybe that's something to consider.
Thanks, Tony. Jason, I just added also a comment about the toolbar, the cell toolbar, that maybe we could use some similar pattern to the toolbar to create a button that's, say, 3 dots and say, okay, if you click there, you will have more information in case the user is close to there. But that doesn't solve the trouble of knowing if there are text that's gonna be overlapping.
If you look at the original issue, Luna's mock-ups actually included that, and the little ... button, and it was perhaps a little bit too small. So we might have to iterate on that as well.
But that's not trivial. I know from the other extension I've done. That's why I end up having all those configurations saying, okay, do whatever you like.
Yeah, and I also made it a point to even keep the CSS class names different from yours, so that if someone wanted to disable the cell toolbar extension in favor of the enhanced cell toolbar, I want to be able to do that without conflict. So, and once again, thank you very much, Frederick, for helping to build kind of the predecessor to the work that I've been doing.
You're welcome.
Yeah, coming back to the triage meeting, I see in the calendar it's a 1 hour triage for JupyterLab and Classic Notebook, correct? For both? I'm
not sure what it explicitly says, but that is kind of the broad agenda for it.
Yeah, because at the notebook meeting, I said I would go to the Classic Notebook issues. So I'm going to try. I don't know if it makes sense to, let's say, split into that triage meeting, because while sometimes there are dependencies, but I think for the Classic Notebooks, there are a lot of to be discussed, which doesn't depend on JupyterLab. So I don't know if we can say the first part would be for Classic and the second part would be for Lab.
Some issues depend on JupyterLab because they would be fixed by Notebook 7, depending on JupyterLab. I think that was one of the reasons also for having the two together.
Yeah. Yes, I guess some issues, but I guess also a lot of the historical issue still needs to be addressed. We don't want to drop the existing notebook user and say, well, just wait, we're gonna wait for a few months or migrate to notebook 7 to solve your issue. So probably I can try to identify a subset of issues which does not depend on JupyterLab. But this is why maybe there should be, or there could be a dedicated notebook triage, which does not depend on, I would say, support classic notebook and migrate classic, but maybe it's too much. Maybe it's I don't know.
Okay.
For the discussion,
Well, if we
I'll
have no other
know.
comments, I think we should make sure that everyone else has time to discuss their items.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jason. And with that, I think we can move to Jeremy.
Yeah, so there is still this pull request open on JupyterLab to drop NP Classic and replace it by a new package called Notebook Shim. And I think now it should be ready to go now. And the idea would be to get that one in, and then there's another pull request that extracts the Markdown parser into a separate plugin that we should also be able to merge. And following these two merges, then the idea would be to make a new 4.0 pre-release. So yeah, that would unblock quite a few things on a downstream project. So yeah, that's just a heads up of things that are likely to happen very soon. That's it.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Jeremy.
Jeremy, for the notebook shim, I still have tried on my environment rebuilding from scratch, and I still don't get the notebook, but maybe it's my environment. So maybe at some point, and I've seen you have replied that it works for you. So maybe Zach, on this call, maybe if you have time at some point, you can try out also.
Yeah, if you are available after the call, we can also stay for a couple of minutes and check it.
Yeah, it's well, a few minutes I can do that. Yes. Okay.
So Tony, you're next.
I am. Thank you. Isabella's doing stuff for the community, away from the community day. So I'm running the accessibility meeting. 15 minutes after this. Hope to see some of y'all there. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. And then Jason, that's you that have written the question. I don't have precise updates, but Carlos is there, so maybe he can reply.
Which question?
That's Jason that's asking for an update on RTC and cell level undo issue.
No pressure. I'm just curious, sort of wrapping
Yeah,
up that conversation. And in particular, as 3.3 is nearing release. I'm just curious where things are.
Yeah, I started again working on the removing the model DB, like the duplication, and Kevin is working on the undo, on the new feature in YJS to move cells or elements in a Y array, but I don't have any update from Kevin. I don't know how he's doing or anything. And yeah, that's all.
Thanks, Carlos, for the update. I put in the additional notes a point that Jeremy has raised on the issue regarding the release process and the maintainer list. I didn't copy paste the proposed list, but I think that was the point you want to raise, Jeremy, to establish the first list of people that have rights to to do release and be sure that we know who they are and who we can ask for, I presume.
Yeah, I forgot to bring that one up too. So I think some feedback from the couple of weeks been that the release process and also the expectations in terms of timelines were not really clear, and I think this pull request tries to at least fix some of these issues. And part of that is maybe being more transparent on who can make releases and who is going to make releases. Until now, I think it was more. I think Steve did a lot, JSON as well, and I think then it was pretty much anyone who wanted to make a release who could make a one. So the idea with having some kind of group like this would be to just have some contacts that people could just reach out to, and if they want to know more about when the next release is going to happen, in case they don't have their answers during these weekly calls. So if you would like to be able to make releases for JupyterLab, that would be really, really great. I think the larger this group is, the better, because then we kind of dispatch a little bit this chore among people, and we kind of also increase the knowledge on what it takes to make a release. But good news is that with the releaser, it's much simpler nowadays. So if you are interested, comment on the pull request or just reach out on the JupyterLab Gitter channel.
Thanks again for the releaser for having done the latest one. Yeah, that's awesome. It's really easy now. So I'll be quiet for a couple of minutes if people want to raise another point or start some discussion. Otherwise, I think we can stop the recording and go through the issue that are in need for triage.